Hello and welcome to One for the Boys, episode 7. Is that right?
Yeah.
Bonjour for all our French listeners. So we are back with another guest. We've got Harry in, and I think I'll just go over to you, Dan, and take it away.
Question number 1. Hello, mate. Very
Mate, how are you? Good to be here, mate. Good to see you.
What is trauma?
Oh yeah. Do you want the official definition that we sort of go off?
Yeah, bit of official bit, and then your tangent and your take on.
I think it's the brain's emotional response to a perceived threat or a perceived incident that is that then sort of sticks around in the brain. I think from my experiences through work and stuff, it's anything that causes any sort of behaviour or emotional hang-ups, I guess.
And then you work now with kids that have experienced some kind of trauma.
Yeah.
How does it manifest in different children, different settings?
So, the kids that I work with now are generally children who have been in a mainstream school, but their behaviour has not then allowed them to cope there and thrive there. So then it comes down to people see it as, or sometimes see it as bad behaviour, choice behaviour sort of thing. And I think what research is showing more and more now, and this is kind of why the place where I work is, and places similar are starting to crop up more and more, is because we're seeing now more of a correlation between children that have had traumatic events in their life, or they've had adverse experiences in their life, and then a link from that to then what we'd call challenging behaviour. So that's basically why the unit's there. It's for that it's for those children that aren't necessarily they don't always struggle academically, but they struggle with communication and their behaviour really.
I think so we just briefly spoke off air before you arrived, and I was saying I could name loads of kids, particularly when we were at Robert Smythe, that sort of 15, 16-year-old, who probably needed something different, a different style of teaching or a different curriculum to what they were being taught. We were actually saying even though we didn't have necessarily behavioural issues, I personally really struggled with being focused and engaged, etc., etc. How long has what you do been around?
Only recently. I think COVID was there were these provisions around before COVID, but not as many. And I think what happened in COVID was so COVID itself is considered for everyone is considered an adverse experience. So that everyone could sort of count that as a traumatic event. But the knock-on effect of that is there's lots of children now who have missed out on either because of the experience they had during COVID, at home with their parents a lot of the time, and COVID was hard for everyone really in different ways. So either what they've experienced during COVID, or the fact that they've missed out on a lot of social time with other children, they've not learnt a lot of those skills that should allow them to communicate properly and socialise properly and go to a mainstream school.
It'd be good to explain a little bit about what department you work in. That'd be cool, and then people can understand how that's kind of because you're saying it's almost come out of COVID. So it'd be good to explain kind of what you work in as almost as a result of COVID from the school.
What's
sense.
Your day to day? What you do?
So it's a specialist provision, which is on the same site as a mainstream school. And we teach children who some of our children are from the mainstream school, so they get a place with us from the mainstream school. We also take kids from across Leicester City, so they get taxied in. We teach them, slightly different curriculum to what the children in the mainstream building are getting. We do a lot more what's called emotional literacy, a lot more sort of like PSHE type sort of activities, and it's a little bit more like therapeutic. We do, it's sort of a watered down version of what a mainstream curriculum would look like, with a lot more sort of practical and almost like social activities involved.
Is it like a common thing that the children that you have in, I don't know, I always just think they all struggle to sit still, basically.
That's one behaviour, and I think that I said to you before that it's so any behaviour is a form of communication.
Yeah, I fucking love that.
And that's and if you see it like that, then it's, you probably understand. You probably have a lot more empathy for people and a lot more understanding for people.
I can think of almost a whole classroom, if not more, of people that I went to school with that like they had certain behaviours. But if we'd had the kind of department that you work in now, when I was at school, 100% all of them would have been in there. I mean, I was in one class, my English class, and it was like the lowest class possible. Because I didn't find out I was a dyslexic until I was upper sixth. So just before I went to uni. So they just thought I was really shit at English, which I am pretty shit at English, but like there's a reason for it.
Territory.
And it's like I was in a class full of people that had behavioural like characteristics that they just hated school. But looking back now, and I still know a few of them, because just like friends of friends, and I'm like, that makes sense. Like the way they're behaving was a way of them express themselves, that a lot of them are labourers now, and it's like if there was something like that at school, a bit more activity based, they probably would have excelled better there.
Literally.
But I could have done with something like that, because like I struggled, and it was like really hard for me to like read things and just process things. Like I process things a little bit differently. It would have been great if that kind of support was there, but it just makes so much sense when I hear about it. I'm like, wow.
Like you said there, like those people you mentioned, what was actually probably going on is they were feeling something. They were feeling low self-esteem. They were feeling a lack of self-belief in whatever the task was they were supposed to do. There might have been other stuff going on in their life that they were actually thinking about and they were actually angry about or upset about, but they didn't have any way of expressing that in the right way. So then that just comes out in, as you said, that sort of like defensive. A lot of it's defensive behaviour.
I get that.
And almost like aggressive defensive behaviour.
100%. They're always like anti-teacher, anti-school. I remember one lesson, they put a chair in front of the door from the inside. So when the teacher tried opening the door, they thought it was locked. So we sat there 50 minutes with no teacher. And I was just like, well, this is great. I'm going to learn so much here in this lesson. But it was just a way of like, they were so anti, but it was actually looking back, it was them being defensive against, like, because they just didn't know how to express anything apart from that way.
This is really interesting. Do you think what you do is going to bleed into like main curriculum? Because you're talking about kids understanding their emotions. Like most fucking 30-year-old blokes that listen to this don't understand their emotions. So like, this is unreal, because you're starting something, helping kids understand their feelings and how that manifests in behaviours. Everyone needs that. Like, most people aren't good enough at that.
Absolutely, I agree. I fully agree. I think it's it hopefully should become part of mainstream schools and curriculum, because I think what I've learned from my own experiences, my mates and things like that, is if you're more emotionally literate, I suppose, if you're more in tune with your emotions, your thoughts, if you can manage them in some way, I think you're more productive, you're more confident, you probably have better peace of mind, you're more successful in lots of areas of your life.
Peace of mind's a massive one, I think, because I think people dwell on how they've acted, but I know that I dwell on how I act. Like when I'm in certain situations, I'm if I've done something and I'm maybe a bit sharp with someone, and then I go away and I'm like, fuck it, like, was I rude to that person? But then, because I feel like I do have a good understanding of how I operate and why I feel certain things, etc., etc. It's not justifying the behaviour, but you're understanding why that behaviour has happened.
Yeah, and then you're not as panicked by it, I think. And
and you can rectify it moving forwards. And I just think, we teach sex education, I feel like we should teach some kind of emotional regulation.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think you're probably more in tune with, I think you're, as I know you, like you're more in tune with your thought processes and your mind than I think a lot of people are. And I think you're right. I don't think many people are in tune with that part of them almost. So, I mean, it's something I'd really like to get into sort of more. I find it fascinating and also think it's really useful. I'd like to get into it more sort of, in the future, more sort of full time and push that to, either whether that's in schools or, out into the public or whatever it is, like pushing that sort of, that need to actually be in tune with, or just understanding your own mind and then being able to use it rather than sort of battling against it or just tolerating your own thoughts and your own behaviours almost.
It's kind of what we're trying to do in terms of this was bred out of us meeting up for like informal work in a cafe, have a coffee, do a bit of work, chat about stuff, and then the more we chatted about stuff, the more we were like, people should probably, I think other people would find this interesting, like what we've got in our brains and like what with the stuff we're discussing, because we were discussing things like not going out, not drinking, like all they're the sort of classic ones that I think we refer back to frequently. But what we're trying to do is create an environment where you've obviously seen what we're doing, and you said to us last week, you're just sort of like, I like what you're doing, and,
definitely,
and I think it resonates, and probably partly because of what you do work-wise as well. But I think if we're almost we're downstream, and we're trying to pick people out. So people are in the water already. And we're like, anyone else feel a bit like this? Anyone else got these experiences and or not really happy with the way your life's going or how you feel, etc., etc. You're at the top. You're trying to stop people fucking falling in the stream in the first place. I see what you're saying. I think so. I think the things you mentioned, I think, were behaviours. I think almost they were the not going out, the not drinking. They're sort of their behaviours that probably come from the emotions and the thoughts that come definitely
before it. And I think if you can understand, like you say, if you understand the bit before you get in the river, understand the emotions, understand the thoughts, if you understand a little bit about, and like I am an advantage. I'm lucky that I've ended up in a job where I've had to learn about this. But by learning about it, it's massively helped me, not just professionally, but as personally as well.
I think if we had something like this at school, then I wouldn't have had to have got myself out of that river at the first place. I would have been at the other side. But I know now that I'm 34, and I know that there's people that I'm trying to pull out the river, and I know they want to get out of the river, but they're struggling or don't know how to, or just don't want to almost accept their emotions. But I've learned a lot over the last few years about myself, and emotionally I'm a lot I can understand my emotions a lot better, so I know how to manage them. I know when I'm feeling sad, I know what to do, if I'm just feeling a bit shit and anxious and depressed and all that. but there's a lot of people that don't.
Yeah.
And it would have been great to have had that 15, 20 years ago when I was when I was at school, even longer actually.
I'm exactly the same. It's only been the last probably 2 years, maybe not even that long, that I feel like I've got to a sort of not necessarily a good place, but I feel like I'm doing a lot better. I'm finding things a lot easier, and I look back and I think I wish I was like this like 10 years ago. I wish I had this sort of, I wish I'd been taught about this 10, 15 years ago, and I could have been using this for like the last 10 years, because I look at some of the the decisions I made and some of the behaviors that I was getting into over that time, and I think, that was, I don't know if they're regrets or not, but I think I could have done things a lot better, and I think it was just sort of a lot of the things I did were just out of not really understanding what was going on up top.
What age do you teach, or what age have access to what you do?
Yeah, primary age. So our youngest is 5 and the oldest is 10.
Okay, because I was thinking when you were talking about it, I was thinking, imagine trying to develop the emotional literacy of a 16-year-old. Like, can you go back to when we were 16 at school? Everyone would have been like, fuck off.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if you're teaching it from the age of 5, then we've got it's a different game. Because then it's naturally ingrained in what you're doing. And but by the time you get to 16, where you've got 2 things, potentially those problems have been unsolved and they manifest into worse behaviors. But by the time you're 16, you've had 11 years of even just little drips. Like, imagine once a week for 11 years someone talking to you about how emotions impact the behavior that you have, and what emotions come from what situations, and I know that's really hard to define, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, imagine that for 11 years. By the time you're at 16, you're way more in tune with sort of like what you're thinking about, what thoughts coming into your head, etc., etc. Fast forward that to uni again, everything is just developed, and like you said, you wish you were like this 10 years ago. The potential is, if you're teaching someone from the age of 5 how to work in a way that suits them, and how to learn in a way that suits them, and communicate in a way that suits them, just imagine when that person's 18. Like, fuck me. It's a whole different world from when I was 18.
I think probably almost the sad thing, it's maybe not sad, but frustrating is probably a better word, is schools are so focused on academic progress, rightly so, because that's important as well, but there's so much that goes into that, so much time and money that goes into the academic side of a school, but ironically, if most of the children, or all children, could help, if they could regulate themselves a little bit, if they understood, if they were able to calm themselves down, if they were able to communicate more effectively, so that they weren't needing to be taken out of classrooms, or they weren't needing to be in at break time and things like that, they would make so much progress anyway, without almost needing loads of extra support and resources. Because I think my theory is that most people, if they're content, if you feel sort of calm and content in where you are and what you're doing, learning comes quite naturally, and you're almost like you then are sort of open to learning, and you're more enthusiastic about things. You've got more drive to go and do things. So then those, that bit kind of drives itself then, if you've got those, if you've got that emotional stability in place. But it's kind of the other way around a lot of the time.
So you do primary age. What happens to the kids once they pass on from that approach that you teach?
Good question. So they, from our provision anyway, we have another provision at a secondary school that is linked. So some of them will pass through to that. Some of them will go on to full special schools. Some of them might go back into a mainstream school. It depends sort of where they're at and what their progress is like, and whether we can sort of reintegrate them. But the goal is reintegration. Really, the goal is for them to be there for us, almost a set time, and then hopefully get them to a place where they can go back into a mainstream school. But it can be that they go to a similar provision, or they go to a full special school.
It's almost like you're trying to get them to a point where they're self-sufficient, so that they can then like reintegrate and it feel like a normal transition. And then they can cope with.
And hopefully, sometimes it'd be like that. They go back in and they have a key adult that works with them. And but I guess we're probably not far enough down the line yet, because the unit's only been there for 3 years, so we're probably not far enough down the line really to see if it's going to be successful in terms of reintegration. It'll probably be over the next 3 years when we start to get more children get into like year 6, whether we see what they what they're gonna.
It's really interesting, like how it kind of came out of COVID in a way. It's like, was that I don't know if you know much about the background of it, but was that like something that was looked at before COVID, or was it a result of COVID being like, right, we need to understand how kids are going to come back to school and integrate with pupils a lot more, because of this time that they almost been homeschooled for nearly 2 years or whatever it was? Like,
I think it came from, and I don't know for sure, because I'm not at that sort of pay grade to know that, but I think it was that it was recognised after COVID that there was a lot more children than before COVID that probably needed a specialist provision, and the current special SCMH schools and other special SEND schools that were around didn't have the places. So a lot of these provisions were set up as a to kind of almost, I guess, kind of fill the gap in terms of I think children are very carefully assessed as to which provision they probably need. So it was sort of like, because our provision is slightly different to a full special school, because we still have the sort of that eye on like reintegration. So the sort of the children that we would take would be slightly different to children that would go straight to a special school, but they're still children that are identified as not coping in a mainstream school. So I think that was where quite a few of them came from, was from the there's still not loads around. There's more than there was, but there's still not loads.
So there's not one in every school or anything?
No, there's quite a few around, Leicester, and I know other cities will be doing the same thing. But they're not widespread, but there are more sort of being established at the minute.
Interesting.
You said when we spoke last week that trauma is no different for adults than it is for children, and it's just a perception of an event that's happened to you, or a series of events that have happened to you, a scenario that you've been in that has impacted you in a certain way. Are you able to give us some examples of trauma that you see in the kids, or even? I can and can't say. So.
I can give general examples.
I think some examples for people listening would be really useful, because we're having this conversation. I imagine some people are going to be like, well, I don't know if I've had a car accident. Most people would be like, that's trauma. But in the reality, it could just be like your mum was fucking angry for a week, and
I know what you mean.
And it just shit went sideways for a week, and that was really bad, and you've just never let go of it.
Got grounded, got your phone taken off you, no PlayStation.
But so it's like, I just think some examples of what is potentially trauma would be really useful.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a complete expert, but from the training I've had, it's it can be things that, it can be really severe sort of physical things, like yourself. It can be things like loss, losing someone. It can be grief, loss and grief. It can be a friendship breakup that has an emotional impact on you. It could be I'm trying to think now, sort of maybe as like, because I think what I struggled to do is think when I was going through the training that we had, and it, we sort of, part of it was like reflecting on our own experiences, and I was sort of like, I can't really remember back that far, like to when I know, like for one I broke my leg when I was like 18 months old, which I don't remember it, but obviously my mum told me about it, and I think, well, that that potentially had an impact on me, because that's probably quite traumatic as a toddler.
Is it in a locker somewhere?
Yeah, it's got to be in there somewhere.
Even so, I always think, because I had a really pleasant home life, I think I'm very aware that there's some kids that don't have a very pleasant home life. So like don't get things, they don't have like well-heated houses, food is like an absolute luxury, neglect. And is that whole scenario as a one, would that be classed as trauma if someone's grown up in like a neglected home? Is that something, because I can only imagine some children that grow up in poorer environments are then do struggle with behavior, which is a manifestation of
I guess one way of kind of quantifying it is that we talk about things called ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, and there's a massive list of them, and each experience counts as one, and it all just, so basically if you've had say you lived in a house, neglected household, whether it was purposeful, or you just parents struggling to hold down a job, or whatever it was, but if you had so you maybe were hungry quite a little bit, your clothes weren't cleaned all the time, like you said, the heating wasn't on, and you had quite a few, if that happened quite a lot, like that would be like 3 ACEs that that were then sort of left on, you were impacted by. So I think, to go back to your question, I think it kind of, each time that happens, I think counts as like can be counted as like a trauma. There's potential trauma.
I think that's what I was getting at. Like it's just, it could be anything.
I was trying to think of like things that people might be able to remember, like maybe from when you were like a teenager or something like that, because that's what I tried to do when I was thinking about it. And it was, for me, it was things like, so me and you played rugby growing up together, and I remember a couple of times just like head knocks, and that's I remember them even like 12 years old, and I remember them, and I that's probably somewhere in my, even though even at the time I wasn't bothered by it, because it was, we grow up in that environment. It's like, at the time it was, you shake it off, get on with it, just get onto it. But that must have had an impact on my brain somehow, or my sort of part of my brain. So I think it's even like little things like that you maybe don't think bothered you, or you don't look back and think, oh yeah, that was really tough. But actually, if you think about maybe how other people might see that, it might then occur to you that, oh, actually, that actually could be something that is now, with me still, and still impacting my thought process and everything like that. That's what I've learned more and more recently, is that my thinking is massively, my beliefs are massively dictated, I think, by things that have happened years and years ago. And I'm almost like realizing like some of my beliefs are quite unhealthy, and it's like
interesting.
It's sort of like, I wonder where that belief came from.
I wonder like how, because a lot of people who are maybe suffering now like people that I know, they would say they'd maybe suffering from, say, recent traumatic events or like pressures of their life right now.
Yeah.
But realistically, what might actually be a bit more putting pressure, more what they might be thinking about is stuff that happened 15, 20 years ago. And they don't realise that's actually what's affecting them now.
Yeah.
But they just think, oh, my job's really stressful or whatever. I'm just like putting under pressure on this and that. But realistically, it could be something, that happened 15, 20 years ago within their household or something went as a child or something at school.
Yeah.
So I guess it would be really interesting for those types of people to look back on events to be like, what actually happened in my life? What I can maybe come to terms with in that sense of like, okay, well that happened.
People need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
It's for, isn't it?
Yeah, that's literally what therapy's for, is just to talk about the shit that happened.
Because you don't know. You don't know until you're fucking 5 sessions deep and then you say something, you're like, what on earth? What?
Where's that come from?
I forgot about that. Like, what was that? And then you start unpacking, and that's why it's so important.
Yeah.
That's what I think,
Yeah, no, that's what it would be. Just something that's just been buried so far down. Yeah. Like, especially, like, I'd say, like, I was not a confident kid. I was a little bit overweight for a kid. I grew up and I was very lucky that I'm very middle class, like, family. Always had food on the table, get takeaway Friday and Saturday. And I was like,
Friday and Saturday.
Oh yeah, mate.
That's unreal.
I know, like Chinese one night, Indian the next night. It was sick.
Unbelievable.
But I was a little bit bigger. And it was just like, I got bullied a little bit for that. And I know now, like, okay, it is what it is. I've come to terms with that. And I don't get, stressed about it and stuff. But a lot of people probably, something like that little event could have such a big impact on them. Someone could have said something one day, like, oh, you're fat or whatever, or you're too skinny. And that could have stayed with them now, and they don't realise it.
I have the same thing about arrogance. We spoke about that on a podcast at one point. But like, my thing growing up was around that, like, primary Kibworth sort of age. Yeah. I know that people used to say I was arrogant, and it used to really bug me because I didn't really think I was, but clearly there was a thing. Someone was perceiving me as arrogant, but I fucking hooked onto that. Yeah. And that even today is a thing where I'm like, if I get a bit too happy and a bit too like in my flow, is someone going to stop me and be like, pull your head out your ass? Whereas for me, it's just like, I just back myself. I'm confident within my own abilities. Yeah. And I also want a lot for myself, so I try and push myself forward. But at some point something happened at primary secondary school where I got called arrogant once or twice, and that has just I've just gone with that for a long time.
Who was that?
No.
That's interesting though, because you've been listening to, you've been reading Anne Middleton's, right? A lot of his stuff, and I've seen him live. I've read all his books. And there's a lot of people that think he's arrogant, and I can see that in certain situations that what he said or whatever on like his podcast or Twitter or whatever, I can understand it. But at the same time, he's very sure of himself in that confidence way because he had to be through his job. Yeah, he was kicking down doors where if he was hesitant about anything, someone could have shot him. So he had to be super confident in his abilities. And so I think he's brought that into being super confident in himself and backing himself whatever he does. And people probably saw that in you being like, well, Dan's super confident. Oh, he's just arrogant. It's like, it's not. You're just self-assured. And that's what I think I'm trying to be a lot more confident myself, but I also don't want to get into my head that people think I'm going to be arrogant when I'm like, well, fuck that, I'm going to do it my way. But people are like, oh no, you shouldn't do it that way. Why not?
Yeah,
I've got to have confidence in myself.
A big thing for him is the ownership. When he put that Instagram post out about COVID, it was basically like, don't worry about COVID. Like, this was like,
I remember
when everything was locked down, he was like, everyone chill out. There's nothing to fucking worry about.
Yeah.
In the book Zero Negativity, he says like, I was wrong to do that, and I was naive to do that. And I think as long as you have the ability to go back on something and be like, actually, fuck that one, that's on me. I yeah, I don't see any issues with it.
Yeah.
But he does go like full send on everything.
Yeah.
And that is part of him. And I also understand why people would think he's arrogant.
Yeah.
But I think if you're willing to take ownership of stuff, it's just, you have to have a confidence to try and drive stuff, don't you?
You've got to be, again, something I'm probably learning a little bit about myself is you've got to be willing to take risks, make mistakes. And a mistake, like you say, can be treating someone in the wrong way for, as long as you, like you say, as long as you then own that and you try and rectify it.
100%.
There's not, you can't do anything else after that. And I think if you're not willing to make mistakes, take risks, you will stand still. And that's something I felt about myself. I've sort of felt at times, or, until quite recently really, that I was very risk averse, and I was just like not willing to take risks or put myself out there because I was so scared of the, what if I get it wrong? What if I do this and do that? Going back to your point about people saying you were arrogant though, I would say that also says a lot about them in terms of how they felt about themselves and potentially wanting, jealous of you, or, they might have felt a bit shit about themselves and not realised it and thought, he's making me feel shit about myself because he's better than me at this or that.
I was just thinking
then they've so then their way of dealing with that is to pull you down rather than
it's funny, I can relate to that now in the sense of if I see a negative comment on Instagram or something, I'm straight away, I'm like, what's up with them? It's not a reflection on whoever's post they've commented on or whatever. It's a reflection on them. But I still really struggle to go back and justify that for my younger self. If that makes sense. So it's kind of like.
But then that says a lot about you as well, that you're very bothered about the fact that you're arrogant. Sorry, no. You're very bothered about, sorry. You're
it was you that said it.
It's all coming out now.
Yes. The truth comes out on the podcast. You're very bothered about the fact that people think you're arrogant, which means that you definitely, that's not something that you value. You're not valuing being, you're not wanting to be someone who is arrogant, which is a positive thing, isn't it? It's the fact that you're really bothered by it is not necessarily a bad thing. It just shows your values and beliefs that people shouldn't be arrogant.
Kind of, I'm just going off topic or anything, but whilst you were talking a minute ago, saying about people being jealous of your position, etc., in terms of like someone saying something thinking, that person's arrogant or whatever, it's because they want to bring you down to their level. It's because obviously there's something going on in their life they're not happy with. And like when you were saying you were like risk avert, and we took risks going self-employed, and obviously we're working hard to build up businesses and things, and there'd be a lot of people that I know that are employed and questioned why I was going self-employed. They're like, but what if you can't pay the mortgage or whatever? It's like, well, I'll think about that when I come to it. But I'm taking this risk, and people always want to bring you down to their level. So it's really interesting to be like, why? And I guess we've spoken about it quite a bit actually in the drinking sense, like
to make them feel comfy.
Why you're not drinking? It's like, well, I'd like to know more about why they're asking that question. But it's just an interesting thing. I did have a question actually on, you kind of spoke about it a little bit, going back to like what you do. You said you had a bit of training. One of my notes was like mental health training. What have you gone through with that? So my background is graphic design, so I've had no interest in the psychology of people until like the last couple of years, and how people think differently. Maybe from like going to see Ant Middleton, to be fair, because I thought it was Mind Over Muscle, his tour, and it was really interesting. It's like how much is actually in your head versus your physical. So I've done suicide awareness training, and I'm looking now to do some like a mental health first aid course. So what have you got in terms of background? Did you have any background in mental health before you went into this role, or is it something that you came with a job?
No, it was just through this role. So the two big pieces, two big parts of training that I've had have been, one of them is through an organisation called Team Teach, which is it's the strategies we use to de-escalate children when they're in crisis, and we use it to sometimes we have to use physical restraint, so it covers us for that, and safe ways to restrain them, things like that. But it also has the main focus of the training is how to spot the signs that they are sort of almost like working towards a point of crisis, how to help them, hopefully try and help them de-escalate so they don't get to crisis, but then also how to support them when they come down from crisis, and sort of they sort of called like decompression. So they that's a big part of the training I've had. We've also done some specific training on trauma and how to work with children who have suffered trauma, and that was through a teacher actually who's done a lot of research. She's part of the same trust as our school, so she's done a lot of research into trauma. She's now leading that across our organisation, and she did cool. Quite a few bits with us on just how to work with children support children who have suffered some sort of trauma.
Would you say before you got into this role that you had any of your own difficulties that have helped you in terms of your approach, or because I know that going through this process for you has then helped you out the back end of it, so I guess both of those questions in one, if that makes sense.
So did things that I struggled with help me in this role?
Yeah,
because I could see it from
things previously that you were aware of.
I think I had, but I probably wasn't as aware of it as I am now. I think the sort of I don't know though, because actually I think my biggest thing is like I don't. It's worries. I'm a worrier. If I was to describe myself, I'm not. Whereas a lot of our kids they have anxiety, but they're also very. They have probably, I would say, a lot of anger as well. And I've never, fortunately, I would say I've never. I wouldn't say I'm a massively angry person.
Yeah.
I don't get to that point a lot where I sort of want to smash things. Yeah. So I think that's one area I probably don't. I can't understand them as well as maybe other people could, but maybe in terms of the sort of the anxiety side of it, maybe see parts of it in there.
If you're a worrier though, do you must have some part of you that escalates the worry into something that's more than it is, and then that must continue to escalate, and at some point you have to like intervene on yourself and be able to manage that and chill yourself out and be like however you talk yourself out of it. And surely that's similar regardless of what the behavior manifestation is in the child. Surely that as a skill that you've must have, even if you don't know it, developed with yourself, surely that's probably useful to then be in that situation with any child that's displaying any form of getting too well.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I guess the bit that I do find I have in common is the fact that we're not always choosing to do what we're doing. That's something that I've always been. I've felt myself at times. I've been at parties, or I've been at doing what could be doing anything. Probably been at rugby. And I felt like, super, super anxious about something. And I know I'm not performing or I'm not behaving in the way that I want to behave. But you almost sort of can't. It's hard, I'm better at it now, but I used to find it really hard to get myself out of that state. So I think I do empathise with them in that when they're showing some sort of behaviour, I know they're feeling something and they're not wanting to do whatever it is that they're doing. Same way that I wasn't wanting to be shit at rugby.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play well, but I wasn't, and I just couldn't. But I was feeling something, and it was affecting how I was behaving.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I can understand with them, is that they're obviously struggling with something inside, which is then affecting their behavior. It's not them wanting to be. I think that's what some people struggle with. When people come into the provision who aren't used to it, they probably feel a little bit threatened. But they might think that the children are purposely attacking them or threatening them, and I think that's. All of us that work in there know that they're not it's nothing against us. It's not personal. It's not them wanting to hurt us. It's actually them struggling with something, and they can't stop. They can't get a grip of their behaviour almost.
And it's their behaviour, and you just happen to be there.
We're just in the way. We're just that's it. Yeah,
there's something really funny that actually I thought about when we spoke last week, and I've thought about it about 3 times since we've started talking. I came with the Harbour rugby team once. And I reckon it was like Colts.
Yeah.
And I was injured for the whole season. And you guys played down south somewhere. It's like a bus journey.
Yeah.
And I came and watched. And Hayden, I know you're listening to this. You dropped the fucking ball over the try line. And it was like a tight game.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you lost. And then we went back on the bus. So I'd gone down on the bus, watched, got frustrated at the lack of victory. Come back on the bus. Not managed to get any of the energy out of my system because I'd not played. Yeah. We then went for a curry.
Yeah.
And I was sat with you.
Right.
Random. I was sat with you, and I remember asking for a latte. Yeah. The guy was like, "We can't do that." And I was like, nearly killed him. I was like, "It's a fucking latte, mate. Just you've got a coffee machine there. I'll make it for myself."
Yeah.
He was like, "No, we don't do them."
Yeah.
And you were like, "It's all right, mate. Just chill out." And that for me is like the emotions of the day.
Yeah.
I wanted to play so much, and I felt like I'd missed out so much, and I was almost like frustrated at the whole situation. Yeah. And then that's how the behaviour came out in like taking someone's head off that was just doing his job. Like
literally.
He's got like 30 kids to serve curry to. He did not want to make me a latte.
Yeah. That's probably his trauma now.
Yeah.
He's still thinking about that. He's scared of lattes now.
Yeah, he doesn't ever want to go near a coffee machine because he just gets flashbacks of like this one kid asking for a latte and he couldn't do it.
But that to me is like that's not the way I behave. That's not the way I wanted to behave. But that's what came out because of the scenario and because of the way I was feeling.
Yeah.
And I really think adults, guys our age, will be able to relate to a situation where they've behaved in a way they didn't want to behave or that doesn't reflect them. Yeah. But don't have a way of mitigating it. Yeah. Don't have a way of getting around it. Whereas I feel now, like, God, I'm not perfect. Like sometimes I deviate from the plan, but I can generally feel when I'm stressed or when I'm irritated or whatever it is, and I can manage my outputs towards other people a lot better. And I just think the whole thing of what you're doing, it's like personal development for kids, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is the almost like the key bit, isn't it? It's that understanding that your emotions don't go away, your thoughts don't go away.
Yeah,
it's what you do with them in the moment, or not, or don't do with them, which is actually usually more important.
Yeah,
that can have a positive or negative impact on your life.
Yeah.
And it's the same, whether it's kids or whether it's adults. And I think what you boys are doing is the sort of an important route, because it's I think we could, loads of people in my own life who I'd look at and think, you could be not you could be arrogant of me to say, you could be this, you could be that, but I kind of wish for their own sake that like they just delved into themselves a little bit and were like, can I do this better? Can I cope with this better? Can I manage this better?
I'll be honest, I sometimes struggle to have conversations if people aren't particularly self-aware.
Same.
I don't know. I don't know how other else to say that, and that does sound arrogant, and I'm fine with it. Except but no, that one. Yeah. But I just for me now, there's so many layers to every single person. Most people haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah.
And maybe I do feel like a slight disappointment for them.
I think it's like
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know people that are suffering, and they are willing to talk about it a little bit. But I know there's if I could peel away like 6 or 7 layers and really get into it a little bit more, and it's just I want to like grab them and like shake them and be like, look, talk about it. We've been best friends for 20, 25 years. Like, just talk about some stuff. But only because I'm more self-aware of my emotions. 5 years ago, I was the exact same as what they are now. Like, but yeah, it's not disappointing in them. It's just frustrating in the sense of like, I know I could help them become not a better version of themselves, because they're amazing anyway. Like, but just a more developed person and more self-aware of stuff. And it kind of goes into actually my next question of like, I know we're talking about like helping kids and stuff, and people are like, oh, this is one for the boys, like I'm 30 or whatever, like listening to this, how does it relate to me? And I guess it's like, obviously you're having a kid now, I've got friends that have got kids. It's recognizing like your kids suffering from something. And so does your department offer anything for the parents in terms of them being able to recognize within their kids, or being able to like, right, the kids that are going to your department, is there anything the parents can do at home to help with their situations? I know some maybe come from neglected families, or if they might not, it just might be a behavioural thing. But
we have a range of backgrounds, and in answer to your question, probably not as much as we probably could do. There probably could be more more pushed out there to parents. I think parents that come to us and ask us, absolutely we'll give them whatever they need. But I think there's a reluctance from a lot of parents to ask. I think maybe a bit of a pride thing sometimes, or maybe a bit of...
I feel like we're in one big cycle. So, if you have a kid that from the age of 5 has been under your provision, goes into, like, continues that to whatever age, they have much more of an understanding of the way they feel about things, and much better at sort of expressing the way they feel, managing themselves, etc., etc. They then have children, they become better at managing their children's emotions and things like that, but also become fucking interested in how to help their children develop, whereas we're so cardboard box about everything that the adults don't have the ability or the foresight to ask the questions, because they haven't figured themselves out. They haven't even done this for themselves, let alone their 5-year-old. And it's almost like I genuinely think you have the potential to start a cycle where, like you said, you don't necessarily have the results now. You don't really know what's going on now. You just it's something that you think will work. But I just think in 30 years' time, you're going to have people who are having children, and they understand their own brains, and they're interested in the development of their own kids' behaviors, emotions, and etc. etc. I don't know, it just fucking
it is a cycle massively, and we do see that in schools generally, that there is a bit of a cycle from parents to children. I think it's we've like my daughter's nearly 10 months old now, and I think me and my partner talk quite a lot about how wanting her to be healthy, physically, mentally. And I think when we spoke last week, you mentioned about being trying almost, you could try and be a perfect parent, and they will probably things will still happen to them that affect them and are potentially traumatic. But I think that the key to it really, I think, I've not done it for that long yet, but from work, I guess, seeing them when they get a bit older, is not protecting them from everything, but helping them to process whatever happens to them in the right way. Because I think, you can't protect them from everything, and things will happen, but it's when things happen to them and they bury it, and you don't talk to them about it, or they can't talk about it, they can't process it, that it, like with all of us, then you get more and more buried down there, and it just then comes when you get older. It's like it's all there, and you can't. You're struggling more than you should be with things that you feel like I should be able to do this without feeling stressed, or I should be able to do this without finding this difficult. But I think probably from our parents' generation, and it's not their fault, but I imagine the research, for one thing, probably wasn't as easily available for as it is now. I know I like I say, I consider myself lucky that I've ended up working where I work, because that's helped me a lot. But if I didn't work there, I probably wouldn't be aware of any of this stuff, or as aware of any of this stuff, to then hopefully be a better dad and all that sort of stuff.
It's interesting you spoke about beliefs earlier, and some beliefs that maybe don't serve you very well. But the likelihood is they came from your parents or your environment.
Yeah.
And that environment, parents is just an easy example to use. I think it's quite easy sometimes to blame parents for certain beliefs that you hold, but then where did they get them from? Probably their parents, and you're like, well, we'll blame them. Well, but where did they get it's just fucking never ending, isn't it? And I think being able to think about them for yourself, identify, why do I think that? What is it about that I think is true? What is it about that I think is going to hinder me or help me? Whatever it is. And if you can unpack that, I just think I think our generation has the ability to be sort of like I don't know what you would say, like the most well-rounded, or like
functional.
Yeah, just maybe more emotionally intelligent than ever before, because we now have platforms and people who are starting to unpick things for themselves. And like you unpicking some of your own beliefs that don't serve you, that's massive, because they might have been things that the last 5 generations of your family have brought on. And now you've got a little one. If you didn't unpack that and actually think about it and be like, I don't really know why we do this, it just gets put straight onto her, and then it never ends, does it?
Exactly.
I think the self-awareness that you're developing, as you said, through your role, is unbelievable how much impact that will have down the line. Your relationship with Meg, the development of your child, like then your family growing up, like I just think it's really important.
Like I've got friends that have come from like broken homes, and then they've had kids, and it's like they've learned from their belief, and what they grew up with was like, oh, broken home, that must be normal. And then they had kids and like, right, no, I want to have a solid, stable home. And they've recognized that trauma they had when they were growing up in that broken home is something that they don't want to pass on to their kids. So they're just making sure that they are always going to have a stable relationship, and they're like so emotionally switched on with that, and they've kind of like unpacked it and been like, that's what's happened in the past, that's how I was brought up, but this is not the way that I want to bring up my kids. And I guess it's the same with like being like just emotional, whether you've got kids or not. It's just going back and unpacking any traumas to be like, I want to make sure that I don't bottle it down. And that happens to my kid in the same way, because they were their beliefs that I've had. But what about changing that? Like questioning like, why do I believe that? What's right and what's wrong with that, I guess.
I think beliefs, I think, are massive in eventually influencing everyone's behaviour. And I think if you can challenge some of your beliefs, I think the problem is you don't realise you hold them for quite a while, and it's like sometimes it's random things that make you think, hang on, I'm assuming something there, or I don't know if that's true or not, and it can be little things like that, and then you just sort of start to realise that I was doing lots of things because I hold this belief that this is going to happen, or this might happen, or this won't happen if I don't do this. I think for me a big one is friends, and I've is that sort of I had this belief that if I miss like an event with my friends, I'd stop being friends. They'd stop being friends with me. That'd be the end of our friendship. And it made me so anxious about the times when I couldn't attend something. I got so wound up about it, and to the point where I'd be like moving heaven and earth to like try and make it to this thing, because I had this unhealthy belief that if I don't get to that thing, my mates they're gonna be there, sort of not tearing me down, but like they're not going to want to be my friend anymore. They're going to be disappointed in me, and it was so untrue. Like it's nothing they've said or done that's ever made me feel like that. It was obviously something from way back that I had this belief that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be good enough. I wouldn't be there. They wouldn't want to be my friend anymore. And it was like, and since I've realised that, it's completely changed my relationship probably with myself. When I can't do something, I'm sort of like, I'm okay about it now, because I'm like, my friends are my friends, and they'll still be my friends after, even just because I can't make that thing.
I can relate to that. So I'm shit at football. That's why I play rugby. And so I was always like picked last at school when I was at primary school. I just didn't want to.
I feel bad now that I had way more into it.
When
you started out with I was shit at football.
I was always picked last. I was like, okay, great. And I had that thing until like recently, where I was like, had to make sure I was, if my friends were doing something, I had to be there, or like if we were doing something, I had to be there till the end.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, well, if I leave early, I leave early. It's because I either want to go home because I'm done, I'm tired, or whatever, or like that's just when I'm leaving, or okay, they're going to a gig, I can't make it, whatever. Like they're not going to go to the gig and be like, right, we've been to this gig now, you're out of the friendship group. I've been friends with them for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, what event's not going to change that?
Yeah.
And I've just come to realise that I just don't have to get anxious about it anymore.
Yeah.
But it was from that thing of like being last, being picked.
Because, or like being left out. Sort of
I felt like I was always going to miss out.
Yeah.
But now I've come to terms with it, been like, well, it doesn't matter. Like if I'm going, I'm going. Like they're not going to be judgmental about it. They're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to leave you out or whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's just, it's that. It's better known to unpack it, and
definitely
in that sense, I can 100% relate to that. And it's funny about when you're saying about traumas, like one of my friends, he's going to hate me because he'll know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say his name, but like a traumatic experience when he was younger, he can't eat peas because his mum used to hide them underneath the mashed potato to make him to eat vegetables.
Right. Yeah.
And now he has nothing that's like got peas in it, or like anything that's green on his plate, and it's just hilarious.
Hidden peas.
How his like traumatic experience when he was younger, his mum hiding them underneath the mash, which is a completely different like texture and colour.
It's so perfect because it's literally just how you perceive it.
For him it created something that was
he would, if he does listen to this, he will know exactly who it is. My mates will know exactly who it is straight away.
I feel for that guy though, like being scared of peas.
Little change of pace.
Yeah.
You recently started therapy for OCD.
Waiting to.
You're waiting to.
Yeah, not
okay,
currently.
Cool.
I'm sort of. What's the word? I'm like. I've had like assessments for it, and then. Sort of waiting for a start date on therapy.
Can you give us a bit of a rundown in terms of spotting it and just your journey with it?
For me, like spotting it for me, so again, I always go back to count myself so fortunate to end up working where I worked. Through the trauma training, we got introduced to a few theories and psychological models of like the different parts of the brain, and it's a bloke who did a lot of research called Panskep, who basically there's a part of your brain that is, and there's different names for it, and there's different psychologists who've given it different titles, but it kind of all comes back to the same sort of theory. There's a part of your brain that is like very defensive, and it's there to keep you safe, and it's there to protect you, sort of thing. But it's the most powerful part of your brain as well. So if that part of your brain is active or activated, it will generally overpower all the other thought processes and parts of your brain. I don't know if you've heard of the chimp paradox by Steve Peters.
Yeah.
So you've got part of your brain that is very similar to a chimp's and is like just like a threat detector, and it will do anything to keep you safe, basically. And you've got another part of your brain which is more human. So different models, but it's all kind of the same sort of theory. And that was the moment that I thought, I wonder how much of time my brain is like, how much of my sort of time is my brain being defensive and using this, let's call it the chimp. Like how much of my day is my chimp active and actually taking over my brain and thinking for me, sort of thing.
It's like the irrational part, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really irrational, really defensive, really like it causes like the feelings of anxiety to get you out. It triggers the fight, flight, freeze response at times. Makes you sort of almost have a panic attack, sort of thing. It can do that if it feels like it needs to, that sort of thing. And so that made me think, I wonder if that's happening in my brain. And so I started reading about it a lot more online. And I was sort of like, as you do, like when you get onto Google, it just becomes a bit of a wormhole, and I just ended up on loads of websites, loads of articles. And I was like, oh God, I'm like quite a few of these symptoms. Like I feel like I feel that, I have that, I think that, that's how my brain, I seem to be thinking those thoughts, or, I feel those emotions quite a lot. So I just did more and more reading, and then I came across quite a few of these articles were mentioning like OCD. Now before that, I thought as probably most people do, like OCD I think is more sort of, people think it's about cleanliness and like cleaning. And what I've learned is that OCD is like so broad, and it's basically it's just a thought pattern where your brain has an intrusive thought or a fear, basically. It thinks of something that it might happen that would be negative or scary or whatever, and then that's the obsession. And then you have compulsions, which are the things that you do to make yourself, to relieve that anxiety, basically. So it can be anything. You can have OCD about loads and loads of things. And I think mine's kind of jumped around a few things. It's been work, it's been relationships, it's been finances, it's been, all sorts of different things, really irrational things. And so as I was researching, I thought, maybe this is something that I maybe need to look at and actually address. So I contacted the GP and said, look, I think I'm struggling with this a little bit. They put me in touch with a company basically who do therapy for OCD, and then they did a couple of assessments with me, and they were like, you're showing quite a lot of symptoms of OCD, so we can offer you a course of sort of therapy at some point if you want it. And I was like, I'll give it a go, because I was sort of like, I wouldn't say I was struggling with everything. I wasn't in a terrible place, but I did feel like I had days where I was like just in a, just almost like just really overly anxious. I knew what I was thinking was like irrational, but I just couldn't I didn't know how to deal with it. And just sort of thought, I could be better than this, especially having Izzy now as well. Like, sat there with her and not being able to sort of actually be present with her was pretty frustrating. So, that was probably a big turning point for me to be like, I feel like I need to get better at this and, get myself a bit healthier, really. So, hoping that will, I think I feel like just by reading about it myself, reading about different strategies and stuff, I think I've made, potentially like 90% of the progress that I would want to make anyway. And I think, I'm hoping that maybe the therapy, like you said earlier, about getting answers to those things that are deep down, that have been there for a long time, hopefully just push me forward even more, and I'll feel even better. So I think that's where I was at with it. It wasn't like a desperation, it was just like a bit frustrated. I think I could want to be a little bit better, a bit more productive, a bit more. You mentioned, I think we both mentioned peace of mind earlier. Just have that bit more time where you feel a bit more calm and you're not sort of like, battling yourself all the time.
Yeah, we spoke briefly last episode about autism.
Yeah,
I've sort of like self-diagnosed myself with autism.
Yeah,
and for me, it's just about figuring out why my brain does certain things, why certain thoughts come into my head, why I respond to certain things in certain ways, and how do I manage that, and how do I use it to my strengths, and not make it a debilitating thing that causes me to distance myself from people and situations and stuff like that. And I think that's really a lot of it for people who may potentially just have mild cases of anything, ADHD, autism, OCD, those sorts of things. I think really the diagnosis is not the point of it. It's figuring out how you operate and how it will best serve you, and how to best deal with situations that you maybe struggle with. And even just like I've just been on YouTube just listening to stuff.
It helps, doesn't it, though?
Yeah, massively.
It's a big step. I think big stepping stone is to just
and then
self-help.
Talking to Charlie about why do you remember this situation where I got a bit snappy and a bit like, we can then look back and I can be like, that's because I felt a certain way, or like we always say, like run out of social coupons, like, that kind of thing. Like I only have a certain amount of energy for that kind of thing. And once I'm out, I need to exit the building. I need whoever's talking to me to stop talking to me. And that's that. And I then can become quite blunt and impolite, and that's not a behavior that I want to sort of express. And so now I'm aware of that. I'm like, right, my time is coming to an end. I need to wrap this up, but I need to be like a little bit more polite about it. I need to give Charlie the heads up that I'm pretty much done. And then sometimes there's situations where I know that I've got to be in there until she's done, until she's like, right, this is her event, these are her friends we're going with, and I just have to fucking suck it up for the next 3 hours. And that, even understanding the way my brain works and I can't get out of the situation, has still helped. Because I can still have like a little team talk before I go in and just be like, you're here till the end, mate. So you
can manage it, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. It's just the expectation, and I'm like, I know how I'm going to feel, or how I would feel had I not put the expectation on it. So the management is just far better.
You're absolutely right about just being aware of it, because I was panicking about the things I was thinking. So I was thinking something, and then you almost start to believe it, and that's, for me, that was worse than just knowing, probably just OCD.
Do you have any examples that you'd be happy to share?
Also, I'm trying to think of a good one.
Sorry, probably whacked you on the spot there.
So like with work, for example, it would have been like, something happened during the day. Here's a good one. Here's a really silly one, actually. So I hadn't been signing in at work because I just kept forgetting. So I then thought to myself, I was like, what if they decide they want to sack me, and they can prove on the logs that I've not been at work for like 3 months, and they're gonna sack, and then I started thinking, they're gonna sack, I'm done. I need to look for another job. I need to go and get another job. And I couldn't. I was like, sat there at home like thinking like, and I wasn't being like, Meg was talking to me and whatever, and I was just like panicking about this thing, like, oh God, I literally like, I can't fix it. Like, I'm gonna have to just get a new job because they're gonna realize they're gonna want to get rid of me. They're gonna use this log that I've not been in work for ages, and they're gonna sack me.
Save the pain or resign.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll just go. Yeah. And so then that became a thing, and I was like, I was believing that I was gonna leave. I was gonna be sacked, or I was gonna have to leave. But then kind of realizing, oh no, that was probably OCD, like sort of taking over me a little bit. It completely relaxes me because I'm like, oh, I don't need to engage with that thought. I don't need to spend time thinking about that. I sort of let it sit. I let it sit there. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But I can then be like, it's OCD sort of.
That other part of your brain.
Yeah, it's that part of my brain that isn't helpful.
Yeah.
Which is always going to be there.
Yeah.
I just don't need to listen to it all the time.
Yeah. And it's like it's using it to your advantage, like, and having that knowledge of what's going on, and then using that to your advantage of like being, okay, well, I know what's happening now.
Yeah.
Some people just be like, oh, this is who I am, and I'm going to act this way because that's what happens.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, no, like that's not really. You're just making it's like an excuse.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's like, oh, the reason why I do this is because of my ADHD or whatever. Like, it's not being like recognizing that there's got certain behaviors and then being like, well, that's what happens, but how can I manage it? How can I, make the best of the situation in that sense? I know a couple of people that would use it for an excuse, and it's like, actually, if you had a bit more self-discovery and understanding about how it had, like, what's going on, and then use it to your advantage, it would be a lot better. But it's having that.
That's the key, isn't it? Like, we're still all responsible for our behaviour.
We
don't massively control our thoughts, but you are responsible for your behaviour, and I think that bridging the being able to manage the gap between your thoughts and your behaviour is the key to being probably happy and successful and all those things that we want to be, I guess.
I'm still sorry.
No, shoot.
I'm still like, I still suffer with my dyslexia because I'll post something on either like my own personal or Clutch, and then Zoe will be like, have you read it? And I'm like, yes. And then I read it back and I'm like, no. It's like I miss words or I misspell something, and it's like, okay, now I know I need to get better. Proofreading or anything I know if I'm going to write a big email or I'm approaching someone else about something, I always get her to read it. And that's my way of being like, right, okay, I know my weakness.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to use something else to.
Yeah, at least you're not sort of just being like, oh, well, I've got dyslexia, so I can't do this.
Yeah,
like you're finding ways of using.
Autocorrect just doesn't work for me anymore because I spell stuff so wrong. He just thinks it's just wrong.
I again think this comes full circle in the sense that people who use the isms to blame their behaviours just don't have that emotional literacy that they would have if we were taught it once a week from the age of 5. We'd be at that point where people would be like, okay, these are all of the things that I've felt for my whole life. I've been able to manage them better, and I also have ADHD, which means that I get a bit excited sometimes, or however it manifests in you. But because you have an understanding of how to keep in check with the other things, you also have an understanding of how that impacts you, and I just think it's all tied in.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, so I mentioned it a bit earlier. I really, at some point, I'd really like to get into probably working with adults as well. Like maybe even more so, because I think you can. They've got the language potentially to actually go into bits more, and I think that would I'd really like to do, like where you sort of. It's like kind of coaching, isn't it, in terms of like
it is,
how you coaching mindset and performance, and how that kind of how if you can coach someone to challenge their thinking and manage their thinking in the right way, it will hopefully help them massively with their behaviour and their performance in whatever part of life they want to focus on.
Yeah,
and they've got more intelligence to do it now. I always think like, if I had the talent I have now, but went back 15 years, I'd just do things completely different. But it's like back then I didn't have the emotional intelligence to do it. So it's now people teaching adults to do that, they can make more of an impact now and rectify some of the things that are maybe holding them back or do play in their mind as traumatic events.
There must be a hunger for it. That sort of.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, how do you get a platform where it's more accessible, because not everyone can afford, number one, to wait for a therapist or a coach, and not everyone can afford to physically pay for a coach.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, I imagine there's a lot of hunger for it, a lot of people who would be actually genuinely interested in discovering their own feelings and emotions and things like that, and how to manage them and all the signs and stuff like that. But there's just not, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing that's really accessible without a price or a waiting list.
I suppose it's unfortunate that you potentially have to earn a certain amount of money to be able to put that cost aside each month to be I want to spend money working on my mentality, my mind,
the money,
because it probably comes quite far. It probably shouldn't, and it ideally it would come, it comes up there with what you do really in terms of physical health, doesn't it? It should probably come up there, because I think people are willing to spend money on nutrition and gym programs and all sorts, but I wonder how many people are actually willing to spend money on their mind.
Like I would love to go and get therapy, but I'd want to pay for it because I feel like I'd want the best for me, the best, and I wouldn't necessarily want to wait and get anything NHS, because I want it to be like the best that I could if I was going to spend my money on it. But I have just other priorities right now, but not going out and drinking. Like, imagine if you said to somebody, right, just don't go out one weekend and put that money towards like a therapy session. They're like, nah, I want to go to the pub and spend £200 on a night out. And it's like, £200 could probably get you a very good therapist.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I'm not saying like don't go out and do that, but it's like, it's that justification of the what to spend the money on, and it's difficult because there should be something that should be more accessible to people.
Yeah, it's finding someone with a skill set to explore it that's also willing to do like free workshops and stuff like that. I mean, there's
I'm gonna look into it.
I think it's a serious avenue to go down, and I think there's a taste for it. But I imagine also, if people really wanted to dig into it, like the internet is there. YouTube's massive. Like you find everything on YouTube. But people, we like to have stuff handed to us. So for a lot of people, it would be better digestible
to have like a coach
as something that's just put in front of them, and it's
given
their
to them.
Course that they go through or whatever, rather than having to do their own.
Even if you. I'm just thinking out loud now. There's no need for me to say what I was going to say. It's just
not very far away.
Honestly, it wasn't even that interested. It was just about how you could offer that. But it's probably not the place to say it because it's just not that interesting.
You can pitch your first offer if you want.
No, it's just. I will say it.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, if you could do it, and I'm sitting here talking to you boys is actually giving me a bit of a spark, I think. But I think and I would actually like to look into it. But it's like if someone could offer a coaching service, and if you, like you say, maybe their main, if it was mainly, if people did pay for it, but then if you got to a point where you could offer free stuff as well, just to supplement whatever you're offering, it's that
could be one for the boys coaching, and then the
fucking hell, you just stolen it from him.
One for the boys coaching, and then you could be the head coach, and then people will just donate to we just choose a charity who will donate to that as part of their entry fee to the coaching. Yeah. Whatever fee they want to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. That
way we're not taking their money, because I would just put it towards a charity that we find.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just buy some coffee.
Standard.
Yeah. I'm good with all my questions. I think it's been really good to talk to you about that, because I know it's about like you teaching kids and stuff, but I think it's so much more powerful and relatable to actually like our generation now being able to unpack everything. And I think that's the point. We're trying to create a space where guys can talk a bit more about their emotions, and being able to unpack trauma has really helped me. So I feel like it'd help a lot of guys going forward, just to better themselves, or just to get some emotional baggage off and that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you boys having me on. It's been, I'm sort of fascinated by all this sort of stuff, so it's been fun to properly go for it.
It's you can just go forever, can't you? With like personal development.
Yeah, because one thing leads to something else, doesn't it? Like one question leads to...
Yeah.
It's like never ending. But yeah, I'm good to call it there.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening. Like, subscribe, star rating on Spotify.
5 stars only.
Yeah. Amazon and Apple, sorry, still not there. Just get Spotify.
Done deal.
YouTube, that's free, so you can watch it on there or just listen to it. That's it.
End credits.
Cool.
Bosh.
Done.
Sweet.